Please, this is not an order. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe our channel for more comments and discussions. Today's case concerns the murder of a 27-year-old woman who was killed after discovering the secrets her husband was hiding from her. This case dates back to July 2004, approximately 19 years ago. This dark case concerns Lori Hacking, who was suddenly missing, and her husband, Mark Hacking. Lori was reported missing on July 19 while out for a jog, but the investigation into her disappearance showed she was actually murdered, not kidnapped. The cruelest thing about this story is that she was cruelly killed in her sleep by her husband, Mark. If you want to understand how this nightmarish affair started and how it unfolded, watch this video until the end. Lori Hacking was a woman from Utah who grew up with her adoptive family, which is from California. She was adopted by the Source family in 1987 when she was 11 years old and lived a peaceful life with them until her marriage. Her adoptive parents were Thelma and Harold Soares. Harold, her adoptive father, was originally from Brazil and worked as a Portuguese and Spanish teacher at a public high school in Fullerton. He had met Thelma in Rio de Janeiro while attending the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thelma met Lori in Brazil and adopted her. A few months later, they moved to Utah, or more precisely, to Orem. Lori was a reserved and quiet woman. She met Mark on a trip with their friends when they were both at same high school in Orem, and they stayed together until they got married. Before the tragedy, they had known each other for 10 years and had been married for 5 years. All their acquaintances described them as inseparable, and they loved each other very much. Mark had a completely opposite personality from Lori's, but despite that, they got along very well. Thelma Soares, Lori's adoptive mother, said that according to her, Mark was the ideal son-in-law, and she considered him her son. He was outgoing and had an extrovert personality, and everyone got along well with him. Since his personality was completely different from Lori's, many people made fun of him and told him how he managed to marry a woman who was the complete opposite of him. This affair started after Lori found out she was 5 weeks pregnant and broke the news to her family and friends. This happy news had greatly rejoiced their loved ones, and the couple was preparing to make changes in their lives. They had planned to leave Utah and settle in North Carolina. They had chosen this destination because Mark Hacking wanted to enter a medical school. Both Lori and Mark had specific goals that they intended to achieve in the future. On July 15, 2004, a few days before her disappearance, Lori sent a letter to their best friend, Brian Hamilton, telling him their new address in North Carolina. A day later, Lori received a call from a local college. Since that call, she has been behaving strangely, and her colleagues at work have even seen her crying. Her colleagues thought she had a serious problem in her private life. The truth was that she had just learned a secret about her husband that had unsettled her. Her husband, Mark, had never enrolled in medical school, and all the projects he said he wanted to undertake were actually lies. A few days after this disturbing discovery, she suddenly disappeared. Lori was last seen a few days later at a convenience store, accompanied by Mark. From that moment on, no one saw Lori alive, and the next day her disappearance was reported to the police. Surveillance videos showed Mark returning to the convenience store hours after he was seen with Lori, only this time he was alone. Lori Hacking was reported missing by her husband on July 19. He had claimed that Lori had not returned from her morning walk in the nearby woods. Every morning, Lori used to go jogging in the woods near their home before going to work, but this time she didn't come back. When the investigation began, the police immediately found something extremely suspicious. Mark hadn't called the police directly when he noticed his wife was missing. The thing that was strange was that he had bought a new mattress before calling the police. How could a person who has just found out that his wife is missing suddenly think of buying a new mattress? Investigators began to connect the mattress Mark bought to Lori's sudden disappearance. To cover up the fact that he had bought a mattress, Mark claimed that he had gone out to look for Lori before calling the police, but his claims were not credible. The police began to greatly doubt Mark Hacking's actions and words, as his concern for his wife did not seem real. On the morning of Lori's disappearance, Mark had contacted several of her friends and co-workers to see if she had gone to work early, but all claimed she was absent. Her car was still parked in front of the park where she had gone jogging. Her family and friends knew very well that she would never have run away because she had good plans for the future and would never betray her family like this. The police therefore immediately thought of a kidnapping. Hours after Lori's disappearance, Mark held a press conference and showed his sadness at the disappearance of his beloved wife. He thanked the community, his family, and his friends for fully supporting and comforting him during this difficult and stressful time. Then, the night after Lori disappeared, Mark was rushed to a psychiatric hospital because he seemed to have gone mad. People had seen him walking around late at night with no clothes on. Many people sympathized greatly with him, as he seemed to have lost his mind because the shock of his wife's disappearance had distressed him. After Hugh was admitted to the hospital, some investigators analyzed his condition and discovered that something was wrong. An FBI profiler claimed that people who lose their minds and become psychotic usually don't keep any of their clothes on, but Mark did keep his sandals on, which seemed strange and abnormal. Investigators began to suspect that Mark had pretended to have lost his mind so he wouldn't be considered a suspect in the case. The investigation continued for several days, and several people volunteered to find Lori, but without success. The more the investigation progressed, the more evidence showed that Mark had lied about several elements of the investigation, and it seemed that he had been lying to everyone for several years. Mark's family discovered, to their surprise, that their son had never enrolled in North Carolina Medical College and was never going to do so. Also, they discovered that Mark Hacking never graduated from college and left the University of Utah more than 3 years ago. In other words, he pretended to take college classes when he was still in Utah, but in reality he wasn't going. This secret had been discovered by Lori after Mark's mother wanted to pay his tuition, and the university told her that her son had never been enrolled in school. She had called Mark and Lori's home and couldn't reach them, so she left them a voicemail. In her voicemail, she asked her son why he lied to her and claimed he was a medical student when that was untrue. It turns out that Lori discovered her stepmother's voicemail, and that's why she seemed unhappy the days before her disappearance. She had announced her discovery to Mark, and they had argued for a long time. In the end, Mark got out in the car and left Lori home alone. Not knowing what to do, she contacted their friend Hamilton and explained her discovery to him. She cried a lot during her conversation with Hamilton and clearly showed her shock and anger after discovering that her husband was lying to her. After their argument, Mark had gone to a hotel and Lori had joined him so that they could reconcile. She later told Hamilton's wife, Jennifer, that they had reconciled. Mark had told her that he had forgotten to register and that it was a mistake on his part. He asked for forgiveness and added that he would rectify his mistake. Unfortunately, it was a lie, and that was the beginning of Mark's elaborately crafted lies. Mark claimed he was going to start procedures to gain admission to medical school. He even went to Manhattan for an interview and therefore spent a few days there. It turned out that he did not pass any interviews and only pretended to be there. Mark explained to the Soares family how his interview went, but it seems he was only making up the facts. Sometime later, he had explained to his father the trickery he had done and told him that he had done this because he felt that he was not excellent and that he had to perform better. Many people thought that if he had told Lori the truth, she would have taken it well and continued to love him despite his flaws. Even if he had decided not to be a doctor, she would have loved him and continued to live her life with him. She just wanted him to do his best and choose what he liked to do. However, Mark Hacking didn't think the same way. For him, people would think it is unacceptable that does not become a doctor because, without it, he will not have a bright future. Mark couldn't stand failure. He wanted everything he did to succeed and did not accept having to give up things he had planned. Hamilton, the couple's friend, claimed that Mark was probably very upset that his secret was discovered and that he disappointed Lori, and maybe that's when he started to change. Lori's brother, Paul Soares, claimed in an interview that he loved his sister very much and got along very well with her. For him, it is a real tragedy to have lost her and to think that she could have had a child but unfortunately never was able to do so. As we said earlier, Lori disappeared a few days after she discovered the truth about her husband, and the investigation showed that several of Mark's statements were inconsistent. Specifically, the police discovered that Mark lied about a lot of things during the investigation, and thus he became the prime suspect in Lori's disappearance. The first thing that seemed strange was that the police had found Lori's purse with her wallet in their house, which seemed incomprehensible because usually a person does not go out without her wallet. Mark had told the police that Ash was only going jogging, she did not take her handbag. Another element that caught the curiosity of the investigators was that the house seemed surprisingly clean and shiny. The bathroom had been thoroughly bleached, the sheets looked brand new and gleaming, the bed was tidy and also looked brand new, and Lori's ring was found in her jewelry box, which meant she had removed it for some reason. The bed was new as Mark had just purchased a new mattress, and this was more evident as the bed frame did not match the shape of the mattress perfectly, which showed that the mattress had been purchased in a hurry. Also, investigators found a hunting knife with blood on it, but Mark assured them the blood was from an animal had hunted some time before. However, investigators did not seem to take his word for it and doubted him. Authorities were sure of his guilt when he confessed to his brothers that he had killed Lori in her sleep and had disposed of her body by throwing it in a dumpster near the university. The weapon he used to commit his crime was a gun. Hundreds of people had volunteered to search for Lori, whom they thought was only missing, but they suddenly had to stop their search when they learned that she had been murdered by her own husband. After naming Mark Hacking as the culprit, police said there was a strong likelihood that the motive for the crime was an argument over secrets Mark had been keeping. Mr. Hacking was charged with first-degree murder and faced other charges in connection with the case. The weapon that was used to carry out the murder was not found immediately after Mark's arrest because he had thrown it in a separate dumpster. It turns out that the real motive for the murder was that Lori wanted to end their relationship after she found out about his lies about enrolling at the University of North Carolina and the University of Utah. She had not accepted the fact that he had also lied to her about enrolling at the University of Utah for 3 years. They had a great argument, and then Mark waited for her to go to sleep so that he could shoot her in her sleep. Lori's body wasn't found until 3 months after she disappeared. The search for the body was difficult and took a long time. The police had to search all the landfills in the region in order to find the remains of the body and therefore find strong evidence that there was indeed a murder. Landfill representatives were very helpful during the investigation. The most difficult part was that it was necessary to search for around 4,300 tons of waste, which was not easy. Despite the difficulty of the task, the authorities continued their search with the help of dogs specializing in this kind of investigation. Several people volunteered for the search within the landfill, and thanks to them, approximately 300 tons of waste could be searched each day. After about 3 months of painstaking searching, authorities found the remains of the body wrapped in a carpet as Mark had told them, and established a crime scene where they found it. They set up a tent and several crime scene specialists were present to assess the body and verify if it was indeed Lori's. According to the remains they found, the body belonged to a small person, and only the main parts of the body were present. Investigators were sure the body belonged to Lori Hacking after analyzing DNA on her teeth. Now that the corpse had been found, Mark could no longer escape condemnation and had to be punished for his crime. At first, he pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, but after a few months, he pleaded guilty to murder so that other charges against him could be dropped. Mark Hacking was therefore sentenced first to 6 years in prison and then to life in prison under Utah law at the time. The court had affirmed that he would not have the possibility of parole until he had served at least 30 years in prison. In prison, Mark sold his autograph and other items belonging to him, but after a while, he voluntarily stopped this business. His family encouraged him to write a book about his life, and he did. Thelma Soares, Lori's mother, often communicates with Mark in prison, and she once told him that she would forgive him to ease her state of mind, but she added that she would never forget the loss of her daughter. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more reviews and discussions. Thank you for watching.